On today's episode of CFO Chronicles, we get into failing your way to success with Andrew Jordan from Jordan CPA, turning that failure, that disappointment into motivation to go off and grow into something bigger and better and more successful. And we even touch on a crazy story where Andrew was involved in some whistleblowing on a crazy fraud case. You're not going to want to miss this. Check out the episode. I cannot wait for you to hear it. Enjoy. Welcome back to another episode of CFO Chronicles, the secrets behind success. So excited for our guest who's coming on today, and I'll introduce him in a moment. But I do want to quickly shout out our sponsors over at Universal Accounting. Thank you so much for everything you guys do, supporting the show, hosting amazing events like GrowCon. If you are an accounting firm, accounting professional, tax professional looking to grow the premier accounting firm, make sure to check out universalaccounting.com. Get connected with Roger. They have a ton of resources that we'll put in the show description. Go check them out. It'll benefit your business. To our guest for the day, Andrew Jordan from Jordan CPA. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today and dive more into your story, your background, and all of your success.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Andrew, tell me a little bit right from the start, how you got into this world. I'm gonna go out on a limb. I kind of make this assumption with a lot of guests, and I may be, shooting myself in the foot here every time. But was growing up and running an accounting firm something you knew you wanted to do when you were running around on the playground at school?
It wasn't, surprisingly. I think it is for some people, but it wasn't for me.
Okay.
So, my dad's a doctor, and when I was in high school, I was great grades, all that kind of thing. And it's like, do you want to be a doctor or a lawyer? That's what your school counselor. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor because my dad was a doctor, and there's a lot of negative things about medical. So he had me talk to his lawyer, and I kind of got to explore that. And he had me talk to a CPA. And so as like a junior in high school, I was like, oh, the CPA thing, that sounds really good. Hadn't taken a bookkeeping class, any of that kind of thing, but I was like, that seems like a really good career. And I never changed my major. Started accounting, graduated accounting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I I always laugh when people ask like how did I end up in this space because I hated my accounting course in college. I hated going through it. I struggled so bad to get through it. So the ongoing joke now is when we were picking our niche to work with, accounting was just at the top of the alphabet. So that's the dad joke of the episode, I suppose. Tell me a little bit about, so you went to school, you got your degree, and then out of school, how, like, from out of school to now, what happened?
Man, so yeah, I got my master's, so I get my CPA, passed on the first attempt. Everything seemed like it was lined up. I started at a top 10 firm at their home office on the tax department. I got an internship with them, and then they hired me on after that. And then April 15th, after my first year full time, got called into the managing partner's office. I'd never talked to him before, and he said, "Hey, this is your last day. You have 30 minutes to pack up all of your stuff." And I didn't realize, and I talked with my professors afterwards, and they were like, "Oh man, we thought they had stopped doing that." But this firm, like I think a lot of firms, every year after tax day, they just let a certain amount of people go because they don't want to carry them during the off season.
Wow.
Yeah. So it
So
was a
first
brutal.
time meeting one of the partners and you're
Yeah.
barely getting your pleasantries out of the way and you're packing up your box to leave.
Absolutely. It was rough. I mean, there was a celebration that evening to celebrate tax season, making it through tax season, big party. And so they intentionally let several of us go before that so we wouldn't be at the party. And I mean, that firm, I worked an 80-hour week one of the weeks in January, minimum 60. So
Goodness.
it was like you put in all this and then that was rough.
So how'd you bounce back from that? Because I'm sure that, I mean, being let go from any job, I was let go from a job before actually starting this, but it's a hit to the ego and like
Oh
it
gosh,
it hurts, it's hard. I mean, for me anyways, I felt like, I felt pretty small at the time. Like what did I do wrong?
for
Will
sure.
I be successful anywhere else? Like how did you respond to that and how did you bounce back?
Oh man, it's a good question. I don't think we talk about it enough. We always talk about our successes and things, but like before I officially started full time, my wife and I had over, I don't know, 6 or 8 people who were part of my same start class with this firm. And we toasted to all making partner together. You know what I mean? Like that's how it was because that's it was kind of the mentality. And so it was devastating. And so I remember, so I was let go. I was home at like noon or something. My wife's a teacher, wasn't going to be home for hours. And I had like hours to just sit with it, right? And think, how am I going to explain to my wife that like, I lost my job? It was never even on my radar. The funny thing is, when I became CFO later, not to jump ahead, when I became CFO, most CFOs don't do their own taxes, don't do their own some certain pieces of things. And the firm I hired was the same firm
Wow.
that far because enough time had passed, there was no bad blood, and like they do really good quality work, and we're in a small area, and they're like the ones that did the quality that I wanted. It was a different partner group and stuff, but like it was funny. So that was part of it to me. I was like, okay, I think I have gotten over this. I'm okay. But man, bouncing back was hard. I had an uncle who was a lawyer. I called him and said, should I consider law? Like maybe this accounting thing isn't for me. It was pretty tough. And I look back now and I was depressed. Didn't realize at the time I'm a very upbeat guy, so I had no experience with this. But I was like, it was hard to get out of bed. I would wake up in the morning and I had this like pit in my stomach, this feeling, and it would take like a few seconds to realize, and then it would hit me afresh of like, oh, I failed. It was so hard. But I was unemployed for like maybe a couple months because I'm a tax guy and it's like April, so there's not a lot of jobs right there. Decided to try a small firm. So I went with a single CPA owner firm, like 8 or 10 people in the firm. Was there for a year and hated it because it was a very traditional thing where it's like a beehive where like every email you sent had to go through the CPA partner. And so it just felt very, very
Jeez.
stifling. And I was doing payroll returns by hand. Like this was like 2007 or something. And like getting out a pen and writing out payroll forms by hand because it was very, very old school. I learned a lot, but I was there for about a year and I was like, I have made the wrong decision. I have a degree I am never going to successfully use. And my dad's an eye doctor. One of his patients coming through just asked him during their annual exam, "Hey, how's your son, the accountant?" Because they're an accountant too. "How's your son, the accountant? How's he liking things?" And my dad was like, "He's not very happy. He doesn't love it." And so this person said, "Hey, our firm is always hiring, and it's a great firm, and he should totally check it out." So it's a small firm in a different town. It's actually back home for me. Never thought we'd move back home. Moved back home for this firm. It was an open book management firm, very progressive, very cool. And I was there for 3 or 4 years, learned a lot again. And then, kind of the classic story, I was poached by a client to be their first ever CFO.
Yeah, so cool. That's
I know.
awesome.
It's a good bounce back story. I feel pretty
Yeah,
good now. I have no hesitation talking about it, but like, man, at the time I was like, I'm never going to tell anyone because, they would think so little of me if they knew I'd been fired. But James, you were fired, so cool people are fired.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Well, thanks for the compliment there. I'll run with that one. But I
I
want to
I
talk a
think
little bit more. Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, I think sometimes we're fired because we weren't meant to work for someone else. We were meant to work for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm actually very grateful for being fired on how things turned out, and it gave me the opportunity because I always wanted to start something on my own, and
Yeah.
I never really knew what that was, and yeah, I look back now and think, okay, if I never would have been let go, I wouldn't be able to have pursued this, and I think for the
Yeah.
most part, it's worked out for itself, and there's a lot more room to grow, but it's it's kind of just turning that situation into a positive of, yeah, it wasn't a fit for you here. There's more greatness for you somewhere else. And I
Yeah.
think that's really true. But you mentioned how people don't speak about failure enough, and I would love to, because you're so open about it, kind of tap back into when you were let go. Like, what were you doing from that time of being let go? It was,
Mm.
maybe harder to get out of bed. And before you did end up getting that other role at the smaller firm that wasn't a great fit. And that was probably even hard to get out of bed at the time. You're like, I don't really love what I'm doing. Like, how did you stay motivated to to pick yourself up off the mat and end up, getting to where you are now?
I think I worked from a prostate on the mat position, right? Like I don't think I got up. I think I just we're good at grinding accountants, right? Like that's our training. That tends to be our personality. And like I would get up and I'd apply for jobs and it was a drag. And it was several months of just every day kind of sucked. And there wasn't a whole lot of brightness or encouragingness there. It was kind of the cloud over everything for several months. I probably wasn't very fun to be around. So
Do the successes today feel elevated at certain times because of going through all of that?
yeah, so my dad likes to use the analogy of let's see, Jacob, right? Jacob, who had the coat of many colors, his brothers were jealous. They threw him in a well, right? And then they sold him to slavery, and then he was in prison. Like all these bad things happened to him. But then when you look back, it's like, oh, but like it was all just on this path to lead you to this great position. And so, like, if I hadn't started at that big firm, if I hadn't worked at that small firm that was also awful, like, I wouldn't have had the background. I wouldn't have learned the things to be successful at the small firm that was good. And then I wouldn't have had the background to be successful as a CFO. And so, like, absolutely, like, going through the tough times is what made me able to be really successful now. So I'm very grateful for them, even though I would love to never have to go through them again.
That's awesome. I'm a big fan of Alex Hermosi. I don't know if you do you follow him?
No.
No, really, really great follow online. Very, very successful. Um, he's I'd say he's like probably I would argue to say he's the best person in the marketing world or just like the business acumen. He's really good. And he always speaks about how, no great story is written from just a linear line of success or like no hardships. And if you were trying to build, a superhero, you would want them to go through a lot of adversity. You'd want them to go through really hard times to get to the other side of it. So I think it's super important to go through really hard things and challenge yourself and then just be reminded, okay, this is really hard until it's not. And
Yeah.
then when it's not, it everything feels so there's a lot more of a reward getting on the other side of it.
And it like a tipping point, this idea of having like a tipping point. If you've ever read that book, Malcolm Gladwell, I think it's a great one. And it seems like it's not true when you're in the moment, but like you will get to some point, a critical mass is what my dad would always call it, starting his medical practice. Like you get to a certain amount of clients and it's just like, oh my goodness, there's all this abundance.
Yeah.
And it's there, it's a real thing. It happens over and over again. You just keep plugging away, doing the right thing, and you tend to get there.
So tell me a little bit now about Jordan CPA because you guys are very successful. You're on the other side of that
Yeah.
tipping point now from being fired, from working the jobs that you didn't want to be in. You knew that wasn't your future. Tell me a little bit about Jordan CPA. You guys you're crushing it right now. I imagine you love what you're doing. What
Yeah.
what do you attribute a lot of that success to?
So there's one more piece too before I open Jordan CPA that kind of factors in here. So when I was CFO of a company, we grew from 30 to 75 employees in a couple years. And so I have this experience of having grown really quickly. And during that process, though, we were bought by a private equity group. So I was CFO, did the dog and pony show, learned a lot there. Discovered that, and I'll keep this really brief, but I did get to speak at a CFO conference. It was very cathartic for
Yes,
me.
last
AICPA's national conference. It was fun.
last week, right?
Yeah, no, this was a year or two ago. I got to
Oh,
speak
okay.
on this
I'm
topic.
getting
Yeah,
mixed
but
up with your events.
but I uncovered that my boss was committing fraud. I became a whistleblower. I worked with the FBI, who then tried to recruit me, that felt nice at least. It was one of the few bright points of like a really tough time. Discovered that a lot of the income we had was fake, and it was this whole big thing. It was very public. It was a super stressful time. During it, we discovered we were losing a couple $100,000 a month. And the equity group said, "Hey, Andrew, you're now the president because our CEO is now in jail, and he's in jail for a few more years and has like a $20 million restitution order. And like you're now in charge of figuring out how to fix this thing." And
Jeez.
so that's the piece that for me was probably the most encouraging for me. Like, okay, fine, I've been a CFO, so I can like sell CFO services, but also like I can run a business. I've run a business. We turned it around in a year. And then the kind of sad ending there is our equity group did a settlement with the federal government, and it was like $100 million settlement or something. It was just phenomenally, horribly for them big. And so they lost all their cash. So they had to shut down like six, eight of their companies all at once. And we'd gone into the black, but like just barely. And we had all this like past trauma and like negative baggage. So like we were one that made sense. So I was launching my firm, and this happened coincidentally in April. So I launched a firm in April. And yeah, but that experience, like one of the things that you talk about is like your experience you always carry with you. And so even though I don't have that job anymore, like the experience allowed me to make Jordan CPA services really successful. And there's like we're a team of 12. We have a new person starting on Monday. We're hiring for two more positions. And so like we're very much in growth mode and have been for a little while.
That's awesome. Are you
Yeah.
open to speaking a little bit more about that experience that you went through when you were the fractional CFO and in the whistleblowing and what happened there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I was their CFO. I was the first ever CFO. When I came in and they had about 30 people, I was primarily tech companies, kind of this family of companies. There were like five or six different entities, but all kind of around tech. And so, yeah, man, that was what happened is we had a Walmart contract. So we're about an hour from Bentonville, where Walmart is headquarters. Um, our CEO, his spouse worked in IT at Walmart, and so he came with this like, and we weren't that big. We're like a 5 million or less a year company, and he had a $3.5 million Walmart contract. I think that was the amount. It was a few million.
Yeah, yeah.
But the idea was it was going to lead to so much more programming work from Walmart. And there was, I mean, it's the most elaborate thing you can imagine. There were emails, there were people. He came every week into my office and gave me a download of his meeting with the Walmart guy. I forgot the guy's name, but he had a name, he had an email. He loved to golf. His daughter was sick. I mean, there are all of these things, right? This imaginary person, fake contracts, fake RFPs, fake everything. And what happened was eventually, after a while, like the project just kept dragging on and never quite got launched. And there are always more requirements and more hoops. And hey, we're working with Walmart, what do you expect? Kind of a thing. And this guy was like a master at sort of perpetuating this.
That's
And
crazy.
it was crazy. And so when I went to my boss, so we were owned by a Native American tribe, was the equity group. And I went to my boss and I told my wife that morning, I'm going to come home without a job, but I have to say something because I have no proof. And the phrase they used to describe the CEO was the goose that laid the golden egg. He was our only sales guy. He had all the relationships. He was talking to Gulfstream. He was talking to Procter and Gamble. He had the Walmart deal. All those were fake, by the way. Procter and Gamble was too, and Gulfstream was too, as it turned
Jeez.
out. But he was a really smart guy, and he built these elaborate things. And so he had all of it looked very, very real. So
Was that a difficult decision to come to, knowing like, okay, I need to say something, but like this is serious stuff. Like you're not, you're not holding a white lie here. This is massive information. Like how are you handling that internally before you did say to your wife, "Hey, I'm going to work and I will be home early."
yeah, yeah, and that was the conversation. And I was very fortunate that the CEO said, okay, well, you don't have any proof. I need you to not say anything and not rock the boat. And also, we will watch this and we will gather evidence. And over the months, like it became obvious. I mean, during that time, after I talked with him and was gathering evidence was actually harder. It was easy for me to decide, like, this is the right thing to do. Again,
Yeah.
accountants, like that's part of our training. Like there's sort of this black and white, don't subordinate your judgment to someone else. So you see something, you have to say something. And so it was easier to say something than not to say something. The really hard part was then afterwards sort of playing double agent
Yeah.
because then for 3 months or whatever, he'd come into my office and give me all these details. And increasingly I was like, I think you're lying to me right now. And to keep my
Jeez.
face straight, like that was hard for me. But
Yeah, no kidding.
yeah, it was
Wow.
crazy. I mean, I was 32, 33, something like that, and I went and had a stress test done because I said to my doctor, I have persistent chest pain, and it was just from stress.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Whistleblowing is not great. It's
no,
not a good thing.
that's crazy that that happened. That's yeah,
Yeah.
my mind's exploded a bit there. That's wild. Well, tell me a little bit about Jordan CPA and all the good things you guys are doing now. So, um, how like what would you attribute a lot of that success to within the firm? You guys are growing, you're in growth mode, you're bringing on new team members. what is working so well for you, either from like a retention standpoint, deliver a deliverable standpoint with your team? Maybe it's how you guys are bringing new clients through the door. What's really working well that other listeners can take and try to implement on their own to see the same success that you guys are having?
I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't say one of the things that works absolutely the best for me is my business partner. And so that doesn't help anyone else out, but man, my business partner, we're so different. We're opposites in many ways. And so that means we're complementary. And where I'm weak, she's strong, and vice versa. It's a much harder relationship to pull off than picking someone like you, but I think it's ultimately a lot more strengthening and so that's having someone that you trust in your business. She started out as just an employee, and she started out as my admin person, and then but she has an accounting background, and then she became my key employee, and then became my partner. And so that for us has been huge. One thing that I am a huge fan of too is we follow something called EOS from the book Traction. And the idea, there's different other systems like it too, but the idea is if you just fix everything with a band-aid, you end up with a company held together with duct tape, which is how so many companies are. And so just spending that little bit of time every week gradually improving things. Man, we look back, you have to do this periodically or you go crazy. And we look back and we say, oh my goodness, we've solved 100 things this year, 100 little things. It really adds up. And so that's part of what's gotten us really traction going.
That's great.
Yeah.
What about the retention aspect, or I guess retention, but even the deliverables, because you're not doing all of the fulfillment every single day. Whatever the the customer orders at the table, you're not
Yeah.
out back preparing the meal and then running it out to the table and checking, hey, did you enjoy the meal? So are you able to speak a little bit about how you're finding team members, how you're able to train up staff to deliver the quality of work that you are kind of able to put your stamp of approval on?
Yeah, you know what's funny is at the tech company, our primary business was custom programming. I don't write any code. I don't know any computer languages at all. And yet somehow we were successful and profitable with someone who can't actually do the work themselves, doing zero of the work, right? And if you think about it, that's like how every company is, except for CPA firms. In CPA firms, and I think engineering firms and law firms and a few other ones, like, oh no, we have to do the work personally. One of my goals in growing, one of the reasons we started talking originally is like, I want to get to the point where instead of 12 or 13 employees, we have 20 to 30. Because at that phase, I really get to be out of the day to day. And that's my goal. Like, I want to be the president of this company. I want to be running things. I want to, I like my CFO, my fractional CFO client. So I'm sure I will keep some of those. But like, I don't want to be reviewing tax returns like I did this year.
Yeah,
That's my goal.
that's awesome. Last question for you, Andrew. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I have ever received. Man, I don't know exactly who said it or the exact wording, but like from a lot of people, a lot of different ways, like figuring out who you are and what matters to you, and then going after that, not going after what you think you should want or what someone else wants. Like, I think that's the best thing. One of my good friends said became partner of a small firm, and she said, I got to the top of the building, got out on the roof, and realized I'd climbed the wrong building. And so she's pivoted her career. I'm super proud of her. She's amazing. But that idea of, do the thing that's right for you, I think that's it.
That's so powerful. It's your life at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
shouldn't be living it for someone else or to try to appease someone else. I think you can help make people happy on your journey. You don't have
Yeah.
to be entirely selfish, but that's really cool. I That's great advice. Andrew,
Cool.
thank you
Thanks.
so much for coming on and sharing your story and all of your insight and knowledge. I really hope the listeners enjoyed this episode. How can people get in touch with you if they want to continue the conversation or they're looking to work with you?
Yeah. So my email is probably the easiest way to reach me. It is A for Andrew and then Jordan, Jordan, A Jordan at jordancpaservices.com. I'm also on
Perfect.
LinkedIn. Find me there.
Perfect. We'll put that info in the show notes so people can get in touch with you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, comment on it, like it, whatever you need to do to get more exposure so that more and more people can get this amazing info that Andrew and all of our guests are sharing. Andrew, again, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of CFO Chronicles, the secrets behind success. I hope you found value in today's conversation. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please rate and review the show. It helps others discover the insights we share here. Second, if you're ready to take your business to the next level and attract the high-end clients you deserve, head over to accountingleadsnow.com or click the link in the show notes to book your strategy call. It's time to position yourself as the advisor your clients need. And don't forget, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to stay up to date on what's happening in the world of accounting and financial growth. We've got exciting topics coming up, so stay tuned for the next episode of CFO Chronicles. Until then, keep pushing forward. Your growth is just one strategic move away.
Thanks for listening to CFO Chronicles, the secrets behind success. We hope today's episode provided valuable strategies to help you attract more high-paying clients. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share with fellow professionals. Connect with us on LinkedIn and leave a review or comment to join the conversation. Your feedback helps us bring you the best insights in finance and marketing. Until next time, keep striving for success and unlocking your business's potential.